He didn't just walk into her cafe. He came in like a man trying to destroy the last witness to his own collapse. By the time Elena Ward understood that the stranger in the black coat was billionaire Adrian Voss, her best table was already in splinters, and her espresso machine was screaming under his fist. Tap, like if you've ever seen one person's rage crash straight into someone else's survival. It was 9:18 on a freezing Thursday night. The kind of night when even the street outside seemed tired. Elena's cafe, the Lantern Cup, should have been closed already, but she was still wiping down the pastry case because closing early meant losing money, and losing money meant another lie to the clinic in the morning about why her little brother's payment still hadn't come through. Only 3 customers were left: a graduate student with a laptop, an old couple splitting lemon pie, a delivery driver warming his hands around a chipped mug of coffee. The jazz playlist was low, the lights were soft. The place smelled like cinnamon, espresso, and the orange peel Elena always dropped into the simmer pot, because her father used to say people stayed longer in rooms that smelled like home. Then the front door slammed open so hard the bell snapped off and hit the floor. Every head turned. A tall man strode in wearing a charcoal overcoat darkened by sleet, his collar open, tie half-ripped loose, hair wet and disordered in a way that made him look less like a polished executive and more like a man who had just walked out of a war. Not a street fight, a boardroom war. The kind with cameras, headlines, betrayal, and enough money to ruin entire families. His breathing was sharp. His eyes were worse. He stopped in the middle of the cafe, took one look at the room and said, almost to himself, "Of course." Elena straightened. "Sir, we're closing." He laughed once. No warmth in it, just disbelief and something close to disgust. His phone lit up in his hand. He glanced at the screen, listened for 3 seconds, then hurled the phone so hard it shattered against the brick wall beside the chalkboard menu. The graduate student screamed. The old couple jerked back. Elena's body moved before her mind did. "Everybody out," she said, voice stronger than she felt. "Now, use the side door." The delivery driver was already on his feet. The student nearly dropped his laptop. The old man grabbed his wife's hand. In less than 10 seconds, the customers were gone, except for the old woman, who paused long enough to look from Elena to the stranger with frightened, confused eyes. "Go," Elena told her. The door shut behind them. Now it was just the 2 of them in the cafe, with broken glass glittering under the pendant lights and sleet ticking against the windows. Adrian stared at the handwritten menu board over the counter as if it had personally offended him. Fresh soup, warm rolls, honey cake, small words, ordinary words, safe words. Then he grabbed the nearest wooden chair and swung it into a table. The crack exploded through the room. Elena flinched but didn't step back. "Stop!" He didn't even look at her. He drove the chair down again. Plates jumped. A sugar jar shattered. A framed photo of Elena and her father slipped from a shelf and hit the floor face first. "Hey!" she shouted, rushing around the counter. "This is not your property!" That got his attention. He turned slowly, chest rising and falling, eyes bloodshot with either exhaustion or fury or both. Up close, he looked devastatingly expensive and completely wrecked. A watch worth more than the cafe's monthly rent. A white shirt stained with whiskey. A bruise darkening along one knuckle. The face from magazines, financial channels, charity galas. Adrian Voss, 40 years old, tech billionaire, cold genius, untouchable man. Tonight, he looked one bad second away from becoming dangerous in a way money couldn't smooth over. "You have no idea," he said. "You're right," Elena snapped. "I have no idea why a grown man is trashing a neighborhood cafe because he can't control his own temper." Something in his expression shifted. Not calmer, sharper. He stepped toward her. "Do you know what happens," he said quietly, "when everyone in a room smiles at you while they're cutting you open?" Elena held her ground, even as fear crawled cold down her spine. "I know what happens when men think pain gives them permission." For a fraction of a second, that landed. Then his gaze dropped to the stack of invoices on the counter, the donation jar labeled Noah's Treatment, the handwritten note beside the register that read, "Back in 5 if clinic calls." He stared at the jar. "Elena," a tiny voice crackled suddenly from her phone on the counter. "They said if we can't pay by tomorrow, they may move my appointment again." Her brother. She lunged for the phone, but Adrian moved first by accident, knocking it off the counter with his sleeve. It hit the tile and skidded under a stool. Elena froze. For one beat, neither of them moved. Then she dropped to her knees, reaching under the stool with shaking hands. "Noah? Noah, can you hear me?" Static. Then nothing. Her throat tightened so fast it hurt. She crawled farther, fingers brushing dust, glass, the cold metal leg of the stool. Finally, she found the phone. The screen was cracked corner to corner. Behind her, Adrian said nothing. That silence was worse than yelling. She pushed herself back up and looked at him with tears she refused to let fall. "You need to leave." He opened his mouth, but a new sound cut through the room. The television above the pastry case, muted all evening, flashed with breaking news captions. Adrian's face filled the screen from a different angle, cleaner, colder, controlled. Then the footage switched to a boardroom exit. Reporters shouting. A woman in a red suit saying, "Mr. Voss has been suspended pending review." Another caption rolled beneath it. "Voss empire in crisis. Shares plunge after internal allegations." Elena looked from the screen to the man in front of her. So that was it. He hadn't come in here by chance. He had been detonated somewhere else first. Adrian followed her gaze to the screen, and something almost feral crossed his face. He grabbed the polished metal espresso tamper from the counter and slammed it into the side of the machine. Once, twice, a third time. Steam hissed out in a dying scream. "That machine!" Elena rushed at him. He turned too fast. His forearm caught her shoulder and threw her backward into the corner of the counter. Pain shot through her side so hard she lost her breath. For one stunned second, both of them stared. He hadn't meant to hit her. That much was obvious. It didn't matter. Elena pressed a hand to her ribs and forced herself upright. "Get out." He looked at her the way people look at a fire they started and no longer understand. Then his eyes went to the broken donation jar. Bills scattered across wet coffee grounds and glass. $5 notes, crumpled ones, quarters rolling in widening circles. All the small, desperate money people had left to help a sick kid they'd never met. Something in Adrian's face finally cracked. Not publicly, not for cameras. Just one brief, naked flash of horror. He took a step back, then another. Without a word, he turned and walked out into the sleet. The door banged shut behind him. Elena stood alone in the wreckage, breathing hard, shoulder throbbing, ribs burning, staring at the ruin of the place her father had built cup by cup over 23 years. The pastry case was cracked. 2 tables were broken. The machine was dead. Her phone barely worked. The donation jar was in pieces on the floor. She knelt in the glass and started gathering the bills with trembling fingers. Outside, headlights slid across the front window. Not one car. 3 black sedans pulled up across the street and idled there without a sound. Elena looked up slowly. In the back seat of the middle car, a silver-haired man in a dark coat watched her through the glass, lifted a phone to his ear, and said, "Madam, I'm looking at her now. It's definitely the same woman." Elena did not cry when the cafe was destroyed. She cried at 5:12 in the morning, when she added up the damage on the back of a flour invoice and realized the number was almost exactly what her brother needed for his next round of treatment. By then, the police had already come and gone. They had taken pictures, asked tired questions, and tried not to stare too hard when one of them finally recognized the name Adrian Voss from the description. One officer had said, carefully, "If it really was him, this won't move fast." The other had looked around the wrecked cafe and said nothing at all. Elena had spent half the night sweeping glass into cardboard boxes because trash bags kept tearing on the shards. Her shoulder was stiff. Her ribs hurt every time she bent. The espresso machine sat open like a dead metal animal with steam dried white along its broken seam. The donation jar was gone. She had saved most of the cash, but not the jar itself. Noah had painted little yellow stars on the glass when he was 12, before hospitals and scans and bad words from specialists became normal language in their lives. Now, all that was left of it was a lid, a bent coin slot, and blue paint dust caught in the cracks between the floor tiles. At 7 a.m., her landlord called. "I saw the footage," he said without greeting. "This kind of incident changes the building's risk profile." Elena closed her eyes. "Mr. Halpern, please don't do this today." "I'm not doing anything today. I'm telling you insurance may not cover this if there's a delay in filing. And if you can't reopen by the end of the week, I'll have to consider other tenants." Other tenants. As if 23 years could be replaced by a chain sandwich shop and 2 coats of gray paint. "I need time." "You need money," he said, not cruelly, which somehow made it worse. "And time is what money buys." When the call ended, Elena stood very still behind the counterframe that no longer had a working register on it. Then she called Noah. He picked up on the second ring, trying too hard to sound bright. "Did you sleep?" "No," she said. "Me neither. Good, now we're twins." She laughed despite herself, and the laugh nearly broke her. Noah always did that to her. Even at 19, thin from treatment and too pale under the eyes, he still knew how to reach for humor like it was rope. "How bad is it?" he asked. Elena looked around the café. 1 window cracked, 2 tables destroyed, machine dead, inventory exposed, rent due in 8 days, supplier invoices stacked like threats. "Manageable," she lied. There was a pause. "Elena, I said manageable." Another pause, quieter this time. "I heard you crying before you called." She sat on the floor behind the counter because suddenly her legs didn't trust themselves. "Your appointment won't be delayed," she said. "I'll fix this first." "That's not what I asked." She pressed her forehead to her knee. Across the room, sunlight leaked through the front window and touched the ruined floor in long, pale stripes. For one irrational second, she hated the morning for arriving like nothing had happened. Before she could answer, a dark sedan rolled slowly past the café. Then another. They did not stop. They did not speed up. They moved with the quiet patience of people who were not lost. Elena watched them through the broken lower pane of glass until both disappeared at the corner. "Noah, I'll call you back." She hung up and stood. At almost the exact same moment, 20 miles away in a penthouse lined with stone, steel, and windows taller than most apartments, Adrian Voss stared at a paused frame on a private security screen and felt something colder than shame enter his chest. On the screen was Elena, kneeling on the cafe floor among broken glass, gathering crumpled bills with both hands. His mother stood beside him in a silk robe, one hand pressed flat against the edge of the table to steady herself. She had insisted on seeing the footage the second her driver mentioned the location. She had barely spoken during the first viewing. During the second, she had leaned so close to the screen that Adrian saw her breathing change. Now she touched Elena's frozen image with 2 fingers. "It's her," she said. Adrian's headache pulsed behind his eyes. He had not really slept. He remembered pieces of the night in violent fragments. The board vote, Marcus watching too calmly, the accusation document sliding across polished wood, a drink he should not have accepted, a call that pushed him over some invisible edge, then the storm in his head, the street, the lights, that cafe. "Mother, it's her," she repeated, and turned to him with a face he had only seen a handful of times in his life. Not social, not composed, stripped clean by memory. 6 months ago on the East River Road. I collapsed in the car after the fundraiser. Do you remember? Of course he remembered. His mother's driver had panicked. Her blood pressure had crashed. Security was delayed because she had dismissed the trailing vehicle for privacy. By the time help reached her, the story had already been cleaned up for the press into something elegant and forgettable. But there had been one unknown variable in the official account. A woman who had stopped her own car in the rain, pulled Adrian's mother halfway out of the back seat so she could breathe, kept her conscious, called emergency services, and stayed until the ambulance arrived. The woman had refused a reward and left before the family team got there. His mother had spent weeks trying to identify her from partial roadside footage. Adrian looked back at Elena's face on the screen, at the same mouth he had watched harden in fury while he destroyed her life. "No," he said, but it came out like a breath instead of a word. "She held my hand," his mother said quietly. "I remember her voice. I remember the café name on her apron because she had come straight from work. She told me not to close my eyes. She saved my life, Adrian." He put both palms on the table. For the first time since the boardroom explosion, the rage that had carried him through the night vanished completely. In its place came clarity, and clarity was merciless. He saw the donation jar. He saw her drop to her knees for the phone. He saw her hit the counter because of him. "What did I do?" he said. His mother's answer was immediate. "You are going to fix it." An hour later, Elena was balancing supplier callbacks and insurance forms when the front door opened over the splintered threshold. She looked up, and every muscle in her body went hard. Adrian Voss had changed clothes. Dark coat gone, charcoal suit, no tie. His face shaved but not rested. He held no entourage, no lawyer, no assistant. Just a cashier's check envelope in one hand and a silence around him that made the room feel smaller. Elena set down her pen. "No." He stopped 3 steps inside. "I haven't said anything yet." "You don't need to." "No." His gaze moved over the wreckage he had left behind, and something tight flickered in his jaw. "I came to pay for everything." "That's convenient." "It's necessary." "It's late." He took another step. "My mother saw the footage." Elena's expression did not change. "Should that impress me?" "She recognized you." That landed, but only because it confused her. Adrian continued, voice low and stripped of performance. 6 months ago, on East River Road, you stopped for a woman in a black sedan. Medical emergency. You stayed until the ambulance arrived." Elena stared at him. Rain, hazard lights, a frightened driver, an elegant older woman fighting for breath in the back seat, while other cars kept moving. Elena, kneeling in a ruined pair of work shoes, pressing a folded apron under the woman's head, telling her to stay awake because the paramedics were close. "She was your mother," Elena said. Adrian nodded once. For a second, the café held an impossible silence, as if both of them had stepped into a place neither could have planned. Then Elena laughed, and there was no humor in it at all. "That's almost funny." He said nothing. "You came in here last night and destroyed the one thing keeping my brother's treatment going," she said. "And now I'm supposed to what? Feel moved because the universe decided to make your family the one I helped? I'm not asking for forgiveness. No, you're asking for the easier version of guilt." He took the check from the envelope and placed it carefully on the only table still standing straight. "It covers repairs, lost income, medical costs if you need evaluation, and more." She looked at the check, then at him. Then she walked over, picked it up, tore it cleanly in half, then into quarters, then smaller, until the pieces fell around his shoes like pale confetti. Adrian did not flinch. "I didn't help your mother so one day her son could buy his way out of being the man he was in this room," Elena said. "Get out." For the first time, anger flashed in him, not hot and explosive like last night, but sharp from being refused. "You think refusing money makes this noble? I think taking yours would make it filthy." His eyes locked on hers. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. Not in agreement, in acceptance of the blow. He turned and walked to the door. But before opening it, he said, without facing her, "Someone sent me here last night." Elena's breath caught. "What?" "I didn't realize it then. I do now." He touched the broken frame with one hand. "And if I'm right, they may come for you next." He left before she could answer. Elena stood motionless in the center of the ruined café. Then she heard it again outside. Engines. Soft. Idling. She went to the window. The same 3 black sedans were parked across the street in full daylight now. The silver-haired man sat in the back seat of the middle one, watching the café with the stillness of someone trained never to waste movement. A second later, Elena's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She answered without thinking. A calm male voice said, "Miss Ward, do not be alarmed. We are not here to harm you. We are here because someone else intends to." Elena's first instinct was to hang up. Instead, she tightened her grip on the phone and said, "If this is some kind of joke, you picked the wrong day." "It is not a joke," the man replied. His voice was calm, older, precise. "My name is Gabriel Shaw. I worked for the Voss family long before Adrian Voss became the face of it. You do not know me, but I know exactly why you are in danger." Elena looked through the cracked front window at the silver-haired man in the middle sedan. He lifted one hand slightly, not waving, just acknowledging that he knew she was looking at him. "I'm calling the police," she said. "You may. It won't stop what is already moving." Her ribs still hurt when she breathed too deep. Lack of sleep had left everything around her feeling brittle and unreal. "Then say what you want in one sentence." A pause. "Mr. Voss did not choose your café at random." That silenced her. Across town, Adrian was in the underground garage of Voss Tower, standing beside his driver's car with the rear door open, staring at the leather seat like it might confess if he looked long enough. His chief of staff had called 12 times. He had ignored every call. The driver waited stiffly nearby. "Sir, I followed the route you requested." "Again," Adrian said. The man swallowed. "After the board meeting, you dismissed your usual security detail. You took the car alone from the east exit. 10 minutes later, you called for me to pull over near Mercer and 9th. You said you wanted air. I remember that part. Then you received another call." Adrian's jaw tightened. "From whom?" "I don't know. Private number." He remembered the vibration in his hand. The voice on the other end blurred now, but not the effect. It had known exactly what to say. Not random insults, specific phrases, specific names. Phrases designed to rip open whatever had already been started inside him. "You were agitated when you got back in," the driver continued carefully. "You gave the address of the café." "I had never been there before." "Yes, sir." Adrian looked up sharply. "Say the rest." The driver hesitated. "I didn't think you chose it, sir. It sounded as if you were repeating what someone else had just told you." At the café, Elena said nothing for so long that Gabriel Shaw spoke again. "Miss Ward, the landlord who called you this morning will receive an offer on the building before noon." Her head snapped up. "How do you know that?" "Because the same man has spent the morning approaching 2 of your suppliers and making calls to the clinic treating your brother." Every nerve in Elena's body went cold. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I told you. Gabriel Shaw." "No, I mean, who are you to know things nobody should know?" This time the pause was longer. "I am the reason Mrs. Voss is still alive after 30 years inside that family. And I am the reason certain men have not yet buried their mistakes." That answer should have sounded insane. Somehow it did not. Elena turned as the cafe door opened. Gabriel Shaw himself stepped inside, folding his phone and slipping it into his coat pocket. Up close, he looked exactly like what he sounded like. Controlled, expensive in a quiet way, and far more dangerous than anyone who needed to prove it. Late 60s maybe. Straight posture, dark gloves, a scar disappearing into his collar. Not a bodyguard, something older than that, more personal. Two other men remained outside by the sedans, watching the street. Elena took one step back. "You have 30 seconds. Gabriel's gaze moved over the damage, the invoices, the broken machine, the taped crack in her phone screen. Nothing in his face changed, but his eyes sharpened when they landed on the folder from Noah's clinic. "He is your brother," he said. "Don't. I'm not here to use him against you." "Then stop sounding like everyone who would." He inclined his head slightly, as if accepting a justified strike. "Fair enough." He reached into his coat and took out a slim envelope. Not money, photographs. He laid them on the counter one by one. The first showed Adrian leaving Voss Tower last night, wild-eyed, tie loose, rain just starting to fall. The second showed a black SUV parked half a block from the cafe before Adrian arrived. The third showed a man Elena had never seen before standing outside the Lantern Cup, talking into an earpiece while staring through the front window. Timestamp, 8:54 p.m. Adrian had entered at 9:18. Elena felt her stomach drop. "Who is that?" "A fixer named Roland Pike. He does private work for Marcus Voss." "Marcus Voss?" "Adrian's stepbrother." Elena looked up. "The one from the board articles?" "Yes." Gabriel rested both gloved hands lightly on the counter. "Marcus Voss has been waiting for Adrian to become unstable in public. He had motive before. He has opportunity now. Your cafe was selected because it was intimate, visible, and destroyable. A small place, civilian witnesses, cameras, human damage. The perfect final image after a boardroom scandal." Elena stared at the photo again. "Why my cafe?" Gabriel's expression darkened for the first time. "Because Mrs. Voss recognized you from the roadside incident weeks ago. Quiet inquiries were made to identify you. Marcus learned you were the woman who saved her life before Adrian did." The room seemed to tilt. "So this isn't just about Adrian?" "No." Gabriel's voice lowered. "It is about control of the Voss empire, the emotional collapse of a dying mother, and the removal of any outsider she might trust." Elena's mouth went dry. "Dying?" Gabriel said nothing for a beat too long. Then, "Mrs. Voss's heart is failing." Elena gripped the counter edge. Across the city, Adrian was no longer in the garage. He was in a private conference room with every digital record from last night on the screen in front of him. Security logs, call routes, vehicle tracking, restaurant receipts from board members, internal messages. He had pulled in one person he still trusted completely, Mara Lynn, the company's head of internal audit, a woman who had built her reputation by refusing to fear rich men. She slid a tablet toward him. "Your blood results came back from the urgent panel you refused this morning." Adrian didn't touch it. "And?" "Your system showed a sedative-stimulant mix. Not enough to incapacitate, enough to lower impulse control and amplify stress response." He looked at her. Mara met his eyes evenly. "Somebody helped push you over." Adrian sat very still. "Marcus." "I'm not naming him yet." "I am." She exhaled once through her nose. "Then prove it before he proves you unstable." Back at the cafe, Elena's phone started vibrating again. Clinic. Her face changed instantly. Gabriel saw it and stepped back without a word. She answered. "This is Elena Ward." The coordinator on the line sounded rehearsed and uncomfortable. "Ms. Ward, I'm calling regarding Noah Ward's treatment schedule. There has been a temporary administrative issue with payment verification. No, Elena said, already shaking. No, absolutely not. I spoke to billing yesterday. Yes, but we received notice from a third-party guarantor that your pledged bridge payment may not be valid. I never used a guarantor. A pause. Papers moving. Then I'm not sure why that note is here. Elena closed her eyes. Someone had reached into her brother's care. When the call ended, she looked at Gabriel with a face stripped of all patience. Tell me exactly what I'm supposed to do. For the next 48 hours, you do not stay here alone. You do not answer unknown calls unless I clear them. You do not sign anything about this building. And you let me put eyes on your brother. My brother is not becoming part of your operation. He already is, Miss Ward, through no fault of yours. She hated that he was right. The cafe door opened again. Adrian stepped inside. He took in Gabriel first, then the photos on the counter, then Elena's expression, and whatever he saw there told him he was already late. Shaw, he said. Adrian. The two men looked at each other with the cold familiarity of people who had known each other through years they would never describe the same way. Elena turned on Adrian with a fury that had grown cleaner, harder. Your family is touching my brother now. His face changed. What? The clinic, my landlord, suppliers, a man outside last night before you came in. She slapped one of the photos against the counter. Was this before or after you destroyed my café? Adrian looked at the image of Roland Pike, and all the remaining color left his face. Mara Lynn had been right. Marcus had not just used him, he had aimed him. Adrian lifted his eyes to Gabriel. How much do we have? Less than we should. Can we keep her safe? Gabriel's answer was immediate. Yes. Elena's was sharper. I'm standing right here. Adrian took one step toward the counter, then stopped himself. For once, he seemed to understand that getting closer was not the same as helping. Marcus is not going near your brother again, he said. She laughed once, bitter and exhausted. You don't get to make promises to me. No, he said quietly. But I can keep one anyway. Before she could answer, one of the men outside opened the cafe door without knocking. Sir, he said to Gabriel, black SUV at the corner. Pike is in it. Silence slammed through the room. Gabriel was already moving. Adrian turned toward the window. Elena felt every hair rise along her arms. The SUV did not drive past. It stopped, and a man got out carrying a thick envelope addressed to her landlord. Roland Pike crossed the street with the kind of confidence only men with protection ever had. He wore a navy overcoat, no umbrella despite the cold drizzle, and carried the envelope like it was already signed for. Not a thug. Worse. One of those polished men who did ugly work with clean fingernails and a neutral expression. Gabriel didn't raise his voice. Lock the rear entrance. One of his men moved instantly. Adrian stepped toward the front, but Gabriel's arm came across him without force and stopped him anyway. Not you. He wants your face in public if there's a scene. Elena was already at the window, watching Pike speak to her landlord, who had appeared from the bakery next door, still in his office coat, keys in hand, confusion turning to greed in real time. Pike opened the envelope just enough for Elena to see paper, stamped tabs, and the edge of what looked like a bank letter. He's buying the building, she said. No, Gabriel replied. He's trying to make your landlord believe he can. Mr. Halpern looked across the street toward the cafe. Pike said something else. The landlord's face changed again, this time with the timid discomfort of a man realizing he was being invited into something larger than rent. Elena was already moving for the door. Adrian caught her wrist before she reached it. Not hard, just enough. She snapped around. Let go of me! He wants you emotional. He wants me homeless. He released her at once, but stayed in front of the door. Then let us handle him. Us? she said, anger flashing hot through the exhaustion. There is no us. There's you, your family, your boardroom disease, and the wreckage it keeps spilling into my life. Every word hit. Adrian took them all without answering. Outside, Pike handed over a pen. That was enough. Elena shoved past Adrian, unlocked the door, and stepped into the street before Gabriel could stop her. "Mr. Halpern!" she called. Both men turned. Pike's expression didn't change. He simply folded the envelope closed. Up close, he had the kind of face people forgot too easily. Handsome in a bland, corporate way. Eyes without warmth, mouth built for plausible deniability. "Ms. Ward," he said pleasantly, as if they had arranged a meeting. Her landlord looked startled. "Elena, I was just being cornered," she said. "That's what you were just doing." Pike smiled faintly. "No one is cornering anyone. I represent interested parties who believe the property may be better used under new management." "The property isn't for sale," Mr. Halpern shifted. "Everything is for sale at a certain price." Elena stared at him. "My father paid rent in this building for 23 years. And I respected that," he said quickly. "But what happened last night changed things." Pike slipped one hand into his coat pocket. "You should be practical, Ms. Ward. The footage is everywhere. Your business is now connected to an unstable scandal involving Adrian Voss. Public confidence tends not to recover from that." Adrian had stepped out behind her now. The second Pike saw him, satisfaction flickered through his face before vanishing. There it was. He had wanted Adrian present. Adrian's voice turned flat. "Tell Marcus to stop using errand boys." Pike gave him a polite glance. "I don't work for Marcus Voss." Gabriel came out last, and that changed the temperature completely. Pike's smile faded. "Roland," Gabriel said softly. For the first time, the fixer looked less comfortable. "Mr. Shaw." "Leave the envelope and go!" Pike's eyes moved from Gabriel to Adrian, then to Elena. He seemed to calculate very quickly how much he could still gain. Then he chose poison on the way out. "You may want to check the internet before making business decisions, Ms. Ward," he said. "Your name is beginning to circulate." He handed the envelope back to the landlord, turned, and got into the SUV. By the time the vehicle pulled away, Elena's phone was already vibrating. Then again, and again. Unknown numbers, messages, social media alerts from accounts she barely used. Noah called next. She answered instantly. "Noah?" "Don't panic," he said too fast, which meant she absolutely should. "A nurse just showed me something online because she thought I should know before I saw it alone." Her blood went cold. "What is it?" A beat of silence. Then, "They're saying you're Adrian Voss's mistress." The world narrowed to a hard, bright point. 10 minutes later, they were all inside the café again, huddled around Mara Lynn's tablet while the lie multiplied by the second. Grainy photos, cropped angles. Adrian entering the café this morning with an envelope. Elena standing close to him outside just now. Anonymous captions, speculation disguised as concern. A woman from nowhere. A hidden affair. Sympathy business scam. Café owner leveraged billionaire scandal. One post called her calculating. Another called her pregnant, based on the way she had been holding her ribs in last night's footage. The comments were worse. Crueler because they were effortless. Elena read exactly 6 lines before setting the tablet face down. "I want to kill him," she said. "No," Gabriel replied. "You want him exposed. That's better." Adrian stood across from her with both hands braced on the ruined counter. His face had gone so still it was almost frightening. "He's isolating you," he said. "If he can make you look like part of my scandal, then anything you say against him becomes revenge or extortion." Mara nodded. "And if he makes the public think you used his mother to get close to the family, he poisons that too." Elena looked between them. "So, he destroys my business, threatens my brother, and turns me into a punchline before lunch. That means he's moving faster than he planned, Gabriel said. Which means he's afraid. Of what? She asked. No one answered immediately. Then Adrian did. Of my mother talking. The room went quiet. Adrian straightened slowly, like a man making himself step onto ground he had avoided for years. Marcus is my stepbrother, but his father was not just some charming second husband like the magazines wrote. He ran numbers, shell companies, private pressure operations through parts of the family holdings. My mother found out too late. She tried to cut him out before it spread. She failed. Gabriel's expression said the rest had cost blood. When his father died, Adrian continued, Marcus inherited the ambition without the patience. He wanted access to everything. Board control, legacy control, my mother's trust. He never got full authority because Gabriel found irregularities in accounts tied to his father's network. Quietly, before Marcus knew how much we knew. Gabriel added, That is why I stayed. Not as security, as containment. Elena looked at him. And now? Now Marcus believes your existence threatens the version of events he needs. A decent son protecting the family from Adrian's instability. If Mrs. Voss publicly identifies you as the woman who saved her life, and if Adrian is seen protecting you for the right reasons, Marcus loses the emotional narrative he's building around the board. Mara slid a second tablet onto the counter. He's also called an emergency charitable gala for tomorrow night. Voss Foundation. Investors, press, city people, the whole performance. He's presenting himself as interim stabilizer. Elena let out a hollow laugh. Of course he is. Public virtue, Gabriel said. The favorite cologne of dirty men. For the first time since this had started, Elena saw something in Adrian that wasn't just guilt or anger. It was recognition. Cold, old recognition. Marcus hadn't just attacked him. He had used the oldest weapon in that family. Make the victim look dangerous, make the witness look compromised, and let polite society do the strangling. Mara broke the silence. We need evidence that ties Pike, Marcus, and the café selection together before tomorrow night. I have security logs from the tower, Adrian said. I have partial surveillance on Pike, Gabriel said. I have a landlord ready to lie if it saves his lease, Elena said. Wonderful. Then she stopped. Her eyes went to the destroyed register station, to the drawer beneath it. No one else noticed at first. When the front system crashed last month, she said slowly, Noah made me stop relying on CloudSync alone. He said if I was going to be stubborn and run a business on no sleep, I needed local backups. Mara looked up. Backups of what? The interior cameras. The exterior camera over the awning. Everything copied to an old drive every night after close. Adrian's head turned sharply. Where? Elena was already moving. She crouched by the ruined counter, ignored the pain in her side, reached behind the loose board her father had never gotten around to replacing, and pulled out a black, portable drive dusted with coffee grounds. For a second, nobody breathed. Mara took it like it might be loaded. Please tell me this still works? They used Elena's battered laptop because it was already there. The screen flickered. The fan complained. Files loaded slowly, then all at once. Timestamps, interior angles, exterior awning footage. 8:54 p.m. There he was, Roland Pike, clear as daylight, standing outside the café, speaking into an earpiece while looking at his watch. 8:57 p.m. A second man approached, passed him something small. 9:03 p.m. Pike placed a call. 9:17 p.m. Adrian's car stopped at the curb. Inside the room, no one moved. Mara copied the file immediately. Gabriel made 2 encrypted sends. Adrian stared at the screen with a look Elena would never forget, because it was the exact moment uncertainty died in him and something harder took its place. Then another file loaded automatically from later that night. Pike again, after Adrian had left. He stood near the broken front window, talking to someone just off camera. Only when the man shifted did his face enter the edge of the frame. Marcus Voss. Not fully, just enough. Enough for profile, enough for coat, voice, posture. Enough to hear him say, clear through the awning mic, "By tomorrow, no one will know whether she's a victim or a liar." Mara looked up first. That's it. Gabriel's voice was lower. That is more than enough. Adrian did not take his eyes off the screen. He chose the gala because he thinks the stage belongs to him. Elena's hands were trembling now, but not from fear the way they had the night before. From impact, from fury finding shape. On the tablet beside them, a live article updated with a new headline: Marcus Voss to lead Foundation Gala amid family turmoil. Elena looked at Adrian. He looked back at her. And for the first time, they were looking at the same enemy. Marcus Voss arrived at the gala, smiling like a man who had never once doubted the world would keep choosing him. The Voss Foundation ballroom glowed gold and white above the river, full of donors, cameras, city officials, board members, and the kind of wealthy guests who wore compassion like jewelry. Crystal chandeliers burned over silk gowns and black tuxedos. A string quartet played near a flower wall taller than a house. On every screen near the stage, Marcus's name appeared beside words like stability, stewardship, renewal. He had built the room for one purpose: to bury Adrian in public, to stain Elena beyond recovery, to become the calm face people clung to while the family burned. Instead, by 8:43 p.m., he was standing under those same lights, trying not to look toward the side entrance every 30 seconds. Because Elena had come. Not in borrowed glamour, not dressed to impress his world. She wore a dark, simple dress Mara had found for her at the last minute, her bruised shoulder hidden, her spine straight, her expression cold enough to make half the room step aside without knowing why. Gabriel walked several paces behind her. Adrian entered separately from the opposite side, forcing every camera in the room to choose between them and fail. The whispers started instantly. Marcus adjusted without missing a beat. He went to the microphone with a warm, sorrowful smile and one hand laid over his heart. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said. "Families endure storms the same way cities do. With grace, with responsibility, and with a duty to protect what matters most." Elena almost laughed. There it was, the voice of a man who poisoned wells and then offered bottled water. Marcus continued, speaking of legacy, responsibility, transition. He did not mention Adrian by name at first. That made the room lean closer. He wanted them hungry before he fed them the lie. Adrian stood near the rear aisle, watching him without expression. On the upper level, in a private glass-fronted balcony, Adrian's mother sat in a wheelchair with a blanket over her knees, pale but alert. Only a few people knew she was there. Marcus didn't. That mattered. When Marcus finally said Adrian's name, he did it softly. "There are moments," he said, "when love for one's family requires painful honesty. My brother is a brilliant man, but brilliance without stability can become danger. And when private suffering spills into innocent lives, like hers," Elena's voice cut across the room like a blade. Silence fell so fast the quartet stopped mid-note. Every head turned. Marcus looked at her, and for the first time all evening the performance slipped. Only a fraction, but enough. He recovered with practiced concern. "Ms. Ward, I'm relieved to see you here, truly. After everything my brother has put you through—" "Your brother?" Elena said. "Or you?" A murmur moved through the crowd. Marcus gave a sad little smile meant for the cameras. "This is not the place for confusion or conspiracy." "No," Adrian said from the back of the room. "It's the place for evidence." He nodded once. The screens behind the stage went black. Marcus turned sharply. Then the first image appeared. Time-stamped tower footage of Adrian leaving Voss headquarters the night of the collapse. Then the toxicology report. Then the call routing logs. Then the exterior café footage. Roland Pike outside the Lantern Cup before Adrian ever arrived, watching, waiting, speaking into his earpiece. A wave of sound tore through the room. Marcus's color changed. "Turn that off," he snapped. Nobody moved. Mara Lynn stepped out beside the tech table, one hand resting lightly on a folder thick with copied records. "It's already been mirrored to legal counsel, internal audit, and the police," she said. "I wouldn't bother." Next came the clinic records, showing false guarantor interference with Noah's treatment. Then the supplier pressure chain. Then the draft offer targeting Elena's landlord. Then the fabricated media rollout connecting Elena to Adrian in timed sequence with Pike's calls. The crowd wasn't whispering anymore. Now they were staring. Marcus's face hardened by degrees as each layer collapsed. The decent interim son, the stabilizer, the man cleaning up chaos. Gone. Underneath was something colder, uglier, and finally visible. Then the final clip played. The awning camera. The edge profile. Marcus himself near the broken cafe window after Adrian had left. And his own voice, clear enough to kill him. "By tomorrow, no one will know whether she's a victim or a liar." The ballroom erupted. Some people stood. Some reached for phones. One board member backed away from Marcus like proximity itself might become liability. Another stared up at the balcony where Adrian's mother now sat in full view, one hand gripping the armrest, eyes fixed on Marcus with a grief so clean it looked like judgment. Marcus stepped back from the stage mic. "This is edited." "No," Gabriel said, advancing for the first time. "This is overdue." Two detectives in evening suits moved in from opposite sides of the room. Quiet men. Prepared men. The kind Gabriel had arranged before Elena ever entered the building. Marcus saw them and lost the last of his polish. He pointed at Adrian. "You think they'll give this back to you? After what you did? After that cafe? After everyone saw what you are?" Adrian walked forward until he stood at the foot of the stage. "I know what I did," he said. "That's the difference between us." Marcus's mouth twisted. "She still won't want you." The cruelty in it was childish, desperate, cheap. Elena answered before Adrian could. "This was never about wanting him," she said. "It was about stopping you." That struck harder than anything else had. Marcus lunged, not like a strategist, like a man who had run out of distance between himself and consequence. He came off the stage toward Adrian, rage breaking through the tailored skin of him, and one detective caught his arm while the other drove him sideways into the edge of the platform. Glasses shattered somewhere in the crowd. Someone shouted. Cameras flashed so violently the room went white for a second. Marcus fought anyway, and that was the end of him. Not the evidence, not the board, not the money. The loss of control. People always imagine powerful men fall with dignity. Most of them don't. Most of them claw and spit and reveal themselves right on schedule. When they dragged him past Elena, he twisted toward her with murder in his eyes. "This isn't finished." Gabriel looked at him without blinking. "It is tonight." Marcus Voss was arrested in front of every donor, every investor, every society name that had smiled too easily at him for years. The catharsis didn't come as noise, it came as silence after he was gone. The kind that lets everyone finally hear what's left. 3 weeks later, the Lantern Cup reopened under a new deed, a new insurance settlement, and Elena's name alone on every document. That part mattered most. Adrian had offered to buy the building outright on the first day after the arrest. Elena refused. He tried again through lawyers. She refused again. In the end, he did the one thing she could live with. He funded the legal fight to secure the property, then stepped back while she won it herself. Noah's treatment was restored through a medical trust established by Adrian's mother, not as charity, but in gratitude she insisted on putting in writing. When Elena returned to the cafe for the first morning shift, the new espresso machine hummed low and steady. The walls were repainted the same warm cream her father had chosen years ago. The old framed photograph had been restored from a scan Noah found on his laptop. Even the orange peel simmer pot was back on the stove. At 10:15, the bell above the door rang. Adrian's mother entered slowly with Gabriel beside her. She looked stronger than she had at the gala, though still fragile enough to make each step feel precious. When her eyes found Elena, they filled at once. "I remembered your voice first," she said. "Then your hands." Elena came around the counter. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Mrs. Voss took Elena's hands in both of hers and said, very simply, "You stayed when you had no reason to. I will never forget that." Elena swallowed hard. "I'm glad I didn't drive past." Mrs. Voss smiled through tears. "So am I." Adrian stood near the window and said nothing. That too mattered. No performance, no grand speech, no attempt to own the moment just because he was in it. Later, when his mother and Gabriel had gone and the lunch rush was still an hour away, he crossed to the counter and placed one envelope beside the register. Elena looked at it. "If that's money, take it back." "It isn't." Inside was a single page. His resignation from day-to-day control of the company until the criminal investigations ended and a new governance vote was completed. At the bottom, in his own handwriting, one line: "I'm done letting other people pay for what I fail to face." Elena read it once, then folded it and set it down. Outside, the street was ordinary again. No black sedans, no cameras, no circling predators. Inside, the coffee was hot, the machine was alive, and her brother was finally getting treated without delay. For the first time in a long time, the room smelled like home instead of survival. And this time, nothing was being destroyed.